Musa, welcome to TechTrends.
Thank you very much.
Tell me about your journey into fintech and why you chose Abuja as a kickoff point.
Beautiful. First of all, I think, let me answer your second question first. Abuja is basically close enough to where I grew up, Kaduna. And, the north is my home, and I'm very happy to be here and working out of here. It's also good to build the business ecosystem up north as well. It's a challenge, and we're doing it. With regard to my journey into fintech, it goes a long, long way. Many, many years ago, of course, I graduated in banking and finance, and I worked in the financial sector for a while. And over time, my life sort of drifted into technology. It started with just one little small item at work where, at a time many years ago, when a very interesting program called Windows 95 was introduced and Excel was super powered, we were able to bring down, just by using macros, bring down the time we used to balance our books from 5 hours to virtually real time. That little spark, I think, ignited my interest in technology. Fast forward many years later, I worked for a few technological firms and then found fintech as an area that brings my core educational background to my area of interest, and here we are. So I guess you could say I'm doing the job that I was born to do.
It seems fintechs are facing a lot of regulatory challenges. What has been your experience?
Well, I mean, like any other fintech, regulated fintech business and licensed legitimate business, yes, we're regulated, and of course, there's a lot of debate about that, especially looking at other countries where the regulations are not quite as strict as they are here. We understand that we're dealing with other people's money, so to speak, and that depositors, of course, have experienced difficulties in the past with finance houses and the like. So we understand why there's tough regulation in Nigeria. But we also know that, with regulation and innovation also have some sort of negative effects on each other. Our job and our duty is to further innovate and use the regulatory constraints that we have as extra sort of incentive to make changes happen. And that's what we've tried to do. We wish, of course, all of us wish we could do more revolutionary things, but we do understand. And we also operate in a conservative environment. Our customer base is fairly conservative, and we can't afford to be too radical with what we do with them. So it's not as tough as it might be in some other locations, but it is a challenge all the same to meet up to their needs.
The banks and fintechs should be friends, but are they truly friends?
I believe we complement each other a lot, even though sometimes...
You think so?
No, that's why I'm saying that. I don't think that we always recognize that we do, but we do. I mean, I'll give an example. There was a project we once worked on, and I remember the resistance to having us come in to start with. But at the end of the day, the bank itself was getting more money from its own client working through us than it had directly. And as a result of that, they actually became a bit more warm towards us. So, it's a process of learning and understanding each other. And I think some banks are more so than others at this point in time. But if I were to look at it over the last sort of 7 years that we've been doing this, the relationships are significantly better now than they were when we started off. And there's still some who see us as a threat. And there's not much we can do about it except do what we do and convince them.
But the reality is that fintechs have come to stay.
Fintechs have come to stay. There's no doubt about it. I think we're felt in more places than banks ever will be, and that's just the reality. And there are many of us touching various places. I mean, when I go to a rural town, even if it's my first entry, I'm more likely to see a fintech than to see a bank in that place.
Maybe that's why there's a new wave of town. A lot of startups are jumping into the fintech space now. I mean, what do you have to say about that?
So of course, you've got to encourage others to join in and try. They sometimes challenge us. Sometimes we find interesting things, but we have to work together. And that's the most important part about all of these things. We complement each other. In recent years, for example, I think we've done more in terms of cooperation than in terms of competition. And that's what the beauty of fintech is, that it actually allows that complement. It's not company A versus company B. It's company A does this, company B does this, and together we find ways to create new solutions that meet the need of the people. And that's what's most important, is the need of the people. What are they doing? What do they need done? And how can we get it done efficiently? And how do we actually reduce our risks in the process of doing that? Because being that we're all new in the new world, there are a lot of risks out there. Now we're in that position where we're actually all working together and reducing the risk that we expose ourselves to.
A lot of Nigerians want to see the local content industry deepened. Tell us how you're deepening local content. For example, do you have your dev team here in Abuja?
Yes, we have a dev team in Nigeria. We do have foreign partners too, but a lot of the development we do, a lot of the integration and a lot of the modifications we do are done here. We have also dev partners, or people who have their own platforms or their own products that we also integrate into ours, and who we also get to modify to suit ours. So we're actually deepening an ecosystem. Some of our very good partners are based out of Lagos, some are here in Abuja, and our own capacity is here in Nigeria principally. We don't need to ask people abroad to make the modifications that we need to do.
A couple of fintech companies complain that they're not treated fairly every now and then. What has been your experience?
Well, I mean, obviously making money is always a challenge. That's the nature. We're all in business to make money. It's not always easy. I think, some from among the client groups we see don't exactly see the value of what we do, and sometimes don't pay as they should. That is always going to be a challenge. Secondly is that, of course, the fintech space has exploded, so margins are low. We're all now, challenged to go get the volumes in terms of transactions. But there are some things that we do not control. So if we control the price, we know that the low margins actually can help us generate transactions. There are some things that are very price sensitive. Very recently, we had a price that was not ours, of our making, that was brought up again. And so it basically eroded an entire market that we had developed over time. And so it's these extraneous factors that maybe sometimes give rise to the regulatory parts that you speak of, and other factors, extraneous factors, that challenge us, where things don't stay consistent for long enough for us to develop and grow the ecosystem. Where particularly up here in the north, the economic factors make price a very, very important part of the conversation with people. So we need a lot more consistency and a lot more leniency in terms of prices for technical services to make it, to make that uptake come.
Musa, you made a bold decision to set up your startup in the north, but what do you want to see to ensure that we have more stability in terms of technology in the north, and we have more startups coming out of the zone?
Well, it has to be adopted, I think, by governments across the board. A lot of direction in a lot of the states is from the government end. And I think, we're here, we see our brothers and sisters in Lagos and elsewhere adopt technology at a very strong rate. Up north, at the retail level, of course, social media, WhatsApp and the likes are very well taken by the people, but it doesn't translate into services necessarily for the people at the government level. And I think we need to see that if that is driven more in a more sort of organized fashion, I think the uptake, the applications that people can utilize, technological services for will grow. Second is academia. There's a lot of good stuff going on in the higher institutions, even up north as well. A lot of young talent, a lot of people developing their skills and showcasing them. And we need to be able to encourage them as they come out of those institutions to incubate those ideas, out for business, that startup entrepreneurship and so on. So at the root of it is, I think, venture capital, developing a stronger venture capital interest in those things that are coming up north, or that are coming up north, that would also help us compete with, with not just Lagos, but the rest of the world as well. We have a lot to show. We have a lot of problems and we have a lot of solutions that have dealt with the peculiar problems that we've seen here. And, I'm very proud of what we have. We just have to showcase it better.
Musa, thank you so much for being on the show today. Wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
I've been chatting with Musa Alibaba, founder TZPay, a fintech company based in Abuja. A key lesson from his interview
is that startups should focus on finding and solving real problems. Musa set out to solve a problem, and even though he made the unusual decision of starting out of Abuja, it has sort of paid off for him because his company is now reputable in that part of the country. My advice is that Nigeria should make a conscious effort to support startups like this. That's our show for today. But the conversation continues online. Please follow us on social media. And don't forget, you can watch these and previous editions of the show on the Channels TV YouTube account or via my blog, cfatech.ng. For Tech Trends, I'm Chukwemeka Agbata.